The development of the Scalabrinian Spirituality from 1996 in St. Francis Cabrini Province. The context. At the Symposium on Spirituality of the Scalabrinians in 1996, the province of St. Francis Cabrini has reported that the spirituality that has developed or manifested by our missionaries was influenced by the very religious formation and missionary values brought by the first four pioneers who arrived in Australia in 1952 from United States. As individuals, the missionaries were commended for their zeal in their pastoral work, such as in planning and evaluating their ministry with the lay people they were working with, but not in their personal and community prayer. Their missionary lifestyle was characterized by intense individualism, particularly with the arrival of the next batch of missionaries who were young and did not share the same religious training and missionary values. While individualism might have produced positive, outstanding results in their pastoral work, it, however, created rivalry, conflicts, and lack of coordination and absence of a strong community life. In such a given situation, the spirituality that was expected to prosper as Calabrinians found great challenge in the culture of the people of a young country like Australia that continues to receive immigrants, as it lacked a clear model of spirituality as the country itself was still trying to carve its own cultural identity. Such reality exhibited by the missionaries was projected as well when the Scalabrinians first made its presence in Asia in 1982. Say by Matthew 25:35, the fundamental biblical foundation that the missionaries had carried with them in their pastoral work. Such gospel verse has left a significant mark among the people they eventually have met and served. Subsequently, the Scalabrinian missionaries were still just looking forward for the spirituality to further develop now that the congregation has started to expand its presence in Asia. The development of the spirituality of Scalabrini as perceived in Asia. To appreciate better the development of the Scalabrinian spirituality from 1996 in our province, one must go back to the way the founding countries had introduced the religious congregation to Asia. This does not mean, however, that in Australia, the spirituality of the Scalabrinians had ceased to develop. According to the first Scalabrinians to arrive in Manila, earlier in the United States, probably impressed by the missionary work of the first Scalabrinian missionaries he had seen when he was visiting New York, the late Archbishop of Manila, Jaime Cardinal Sin, had invited the congregation to come to Manila to open a seminary in view of training future missionaries who could help address the pastoral needs of the numerous Filipinos scattered around the world. Such invitation was taken by the congregation as a clear indication to accept the challenge to spread its mission in the largest continent in the world, where the multifaceted movements of people is characterized by a numerous variety of linguistic, cultural, economic, socio-political, and religious backgrounds. With the arrival of the first two missionaries in the country, they had immediately begun working while trying to learn the language and culture of the Philippines. One of the Scalabrinian pioneers in Manila had initially helped in the development of the Episcopal Commission for the Pastoral Care of Migrants and Itinerant People of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines and the Apostleship of the See in the Archdiocese of Manila, also known now as Stella Maris. The other Scalabrinians was tasked to scout for young men as candidates to the seminary formation. And initially, the reason why the Scalabrinians were invited to come to Manila. In 1984, the first batch of 10 students was admitted to the Scalabrini Formation Center under the care of the third convert to arrive in the country. The said batch of 10 seminarians to enter the Scalabrinian Seminary was a product of vocational recruitment and formation promoted by the priest in charge of vocation and animation, that the Scalabrinians is a religious congregation working for the service of migrants and itinerant people. Early on, those candidates who had come to enter the seminary in Manila were so convinced that the congregation promotes a charism that is so special, yet not very familiar to many in the local church. Quoting the biblical text from Matthew 25:35, I was a stranger and you welcomed me, was the selling point in the vocational recruitment approach of the Scalabrinian confrere in charge of vocation animation. Later, in their seminary formation, the charism of the congregation had become clear to the seminarians as they come to know the founder, its mission, and its contribution in the church and in society. In 1992, of the first batch to enter the seminary in Quezon City, 4 were ordained priests. 2 of them were deployed in the mission overseas, while the 2 others were assigned in the formation ministry in the Philippines. While more and more Filipino students had entered the seminary since it opened in 1995, the novitiate seminary was later established in Cebu in 1996. Temporarily, we were sent here in Italy for our novitiate formation, the first few batches of Filipino seminarians. With the opening of the seminary in Cebu, located in the central part of the archipelago, the pastoral work of the conference in Manila had correspondingly flourished. The 2 church offices under the direction of the conference had somehow helped elevate the identity of the Scalabrinians as credible authority in the mission among overseas Filipinos and their families left behind. Moreover, the Scalabrino Migration Center, established in 1987, had become a recognized destination among scholars studying and researching on the issues of Filipino migratory movements and beyond. The establishment of the Scalabrine Center for People on the Move, or SCPM, founded in 1993, had provided a more tangible image of the missionary work of the congregation from the eyes of the ordinary people, particularly when the pastoral work of the congregation is being asked. Expanding further its missionary presence in Asia, the province of St. Francis Cabrini had opened its mission, a mission in Taipei, Taiwan, Republic of China in June 1994. It initially had sent 2 converts to work among the thousands of temporary workers from Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam. This marked the beginning of the missionaries in the congregation from Asia to be sent within the continent. While studying the Mandarin language and culture, they were already ministering to the English-speaking migrants, particularly to the Filipinos in various parishes in Taipei Archdiocese during weekends. In 1996, in Taiwan's second largest city, the mission in Kaohsiung began. The congregation was entrusted the mission to seafarers and fishers in the Diocese of Kaohsiung. In 1997, a parish considered as the largest hub for the English-speaking migrants in the Archdiocese of Taipei was assigned to the Scalabrinians. It was the first parish in Asia ever accepted by the congregation. Moreover, the Migrant Workers Concerns Desk at the Diocesan Office that manages and addresses the social, pastoral needs of the foreign workers was likewise assigned to the Scalabrinians. The opening of the mission among temporary migrants in Asia marked a sharp contrast to the character of the migrant ministry that the province had pioneered in Australia. The mostly Italian Scalabrinians in Australia were catering mainly to the Italian immigrants since their arrival in 1952. In Asia, the new batch of missionaries had started working among the temporary migrants in Taipei and Kaohsiung. Over time, other missionaries were working among international seafarers at the international ports of Manila, Kaohsiung, and Keelung. This was also the time when the Scalabrinians in Taiwan had started ministering to the fishermen of Southeast Asian origins. In 2002, the Scalabrinians had arrived in Ruteng, Flores Island in Indonesia. This further signaled the congregation's openness to embrace another Asian culture. With the opening of the propedeutic seminary in Ruteng, the province was inundated by the large number of applicants as candidates to the seminary formation. Again, the youthful students were oriented that the congregation is working among migrants, seafarers, refugees, and people on the move. Later, the seminarians were moved to Manila to study English and joined the novitiate formation in Cebu. This furthermore permitted the development of the international formation of Scalabrinians in Asian contexts, with formators trained in Europe, America, and Asia. 10 years later or after, an invitation to go to East Asia, two Scalabrinian missionaries were sent to Japan in 2003. They were assigned to work for the pastoral needs of the Portuguese and English-speaking migrants, respectively, in Tokyo Archdiocese, while at the same time learning Nihongo. Later, the third Scalabrinian priest had joined them to form a religious community and was assigned to work full-time among the Spanish-speaking migrants in the Diocese of Saitama after having completed 2 years of Japanese language studies. In a country under the communist regime, the province had opened a mission in Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam in 2005 with a goal to train future missionaries for migrants. With the first Vietnamese priest to join the congregation, the establishment of the Scalabrini Formation House in Vietnam became rather easy. With the third Asian country where a formation house was opened, the province has manifested its wisdom to respond positively to the signs of the times, aware of the fact that sometimes in the 80s, a large number of refugees had come from Vietnam. Just like in Indonesia, the seminary in Vietnam had received several applicants eager to become Scalabrinian missionaries. In less than 20 years, following their ordination to the priesthood, the average age of the Scalabrinian priests in the province had dropped considerably. Indonesia and Vietnam have become great fonts for vocations. Consequently, their number dominates the theological houses of the congregation in Brazil, Colombia, Philippines, and Italy becomes also an expansion of the Asian presence in other continents. Their presence remains, however, a challenge on how hospitality is accorded to these new converts whose language, culture, and mentality could harmoniously mix with their host. From their propedeutic seminary formation to their novitiate training, and until their theological studies in other countries, it is assumed that the rectors are responsibly managing well, informing them as religious, constantly imparting with them the spirituality of Saint John Baptist Scalabrini. Back in mid-90s, with the ordination of the first batch of Filipino Scalabrinians, the chaplaincy to the Filipino community was established in Melbourne, Australia. Ministering to other ethnic communities besides the Italians and Spanish-speaking migrants in Australia had been strengthened. Later, the chaplaincy to the Portuguese-speaking migrants was likewise embraced. Obviously, it was during this time that the immigrants from Italy were no longer the exclusive recipients of the pastoral care of the converts. Scalabrinian priests formed and trained in Latin America were furthermore assigned to the province in response to the local church's request to assign more missionaries to the Spanish and Portuguese-speaking immigrants. Initiative related to spiritual, not mission, that had been done in the area since then. After the 1996 Symposium on the Scalabrinian Spirituality, nothing tangible actually was done in terms of follow-up. It was only about 2 years ago that the province had begun picking up the issue by instructing the conferees to reflect on the theme on the spirituality of the founder as part of the topic that could generate wealth of reflection in their community and area meetings. This was correspondingly extended to the other bigger meetings of the conferees, such as in the gathering of the young missionaries, those ordained for 10 years, and also those 5 years and younger in the ministry, in the last provincial assembly, and in the regional assembly of Scalabrinians in Asia. Those meetings had discussed the theme on the incarnating the spirituality of Scalabrini in community or mission. Those meetings indeed were occasions for conferees to share their personal impressions and exchange of opinions pertinent to how exactly everyone has come to understand the spirituality of the founder. The materials coming from the general administration were valuable information that started to offer direction to most confreres in the province. Additionally, those meetings had become the source of further reflection and appreciation of the founder's spirituality. To some confreres, however, they believe that there is no such thing as an established Scalabrinian spirituality yet, because the founder himself did not propose one, and it is only now that this is being clarified or defined. Apparently, to some extent, there was a failure to provide a clearer understanding on the Scalabrinian spirituality during the formation years and even to date. At the last provincial assembly in the Philippines, listening to most of the reports presented by the communities has provided an interesting observation that merit a real need to clarify the issue of the spirituality of the founder. Apparently, the pattern that equated the spirituality of the founder to the kind of activities and programs that converts were doing in their respective mission was so prominent. Activities like masses held in their respective missions probably could be interpreted as a manifestation of the same love of the founder for the Eucharist. Nonetheless, this seems not so exclusive to the very spirituality of the founder that was being referred to by the documents given by the general administration when citing the kind of spirituality that St. John Baptist Scalabrini had embraced, besides his ardent devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary and the cross. If every confrere has to celebrate the Eucharist every day, should this daily priestly function be automatically understood as a clear sign that converts had indeed internalized the love of the founder for the Eucharist? What about the recitation of the Holy Rosary, which is a common spiritual activity among the seminarians in the formation houses? If these spiritual exercises are perceived as the incarnation of the spirituality of John Baptist Scalabrini, could this be used as a barometer that our converts have truly embraced the same love for the Eucharist that the founder had, and a special fidelity to the Blessed Virgin Mary, particularly cited in the 37th edition of the Ditio Scalabriniana issued last June 2023. At a certain point, a clarification was raised pertinent to the obvious observation of the understanding or misunderstanding of the founder's spirituality. It appeared that most confreres have come to truly accept that the spirituality of Saint John Baptist Scalabrini could never be separated from the confrere's work or mission among the migrants, seafarers, and people on the move. One specific observation, for instance, is the establishment of the mission to seafarers. This section of apostolate has been very well developed in Manila and later in Taiwan. The apostleship of the sea, which is now called Stella Maris, took a better shape in the Philippines and Taiwan than in Australia. The ministry to seafarers developed by the Scalabrinians in these two countries is a statement, is a testament to the spirituality that has already evolved based on the founder's love for the people and the move. Such special ministry requires training and skills that the Scalabrinians in the Philippines had pioneered in the local church and had in fact influenced more the local church to embrace the ministry. In fact, there is a common perception that by a mere mention of the apostolate to the seafarers, the name of the congregation definitely appears in the radar of the charitable institutions working for the social, religious, and spiritual welfare. In the Philippines, being an archipelago, the work of the Scalabrinians among the seafarers in Manila has likewise influenced some other local churches to establish its own diocesan Stella Maris ministry. Inspired by the existence of SCPM, the Archdiocese of Manila has likewise opened its own dormitory for seafarers just below the building where the Stella Maris Manila is also located, which is also administered by our congregation. When lay people are asked about the Scalabrinians, most of them who know about the congregation would mention their work among the migrants as the missionaries' identity. They too have not identified the spirituality of the founder away from the work among the people on the move, as what we have heard from the presentation of John Nazareno yesterday. The group of Scalabrinian lay in the Philippines, for example, and even Indonesia, connects the image of the Scalabrinians as missionaries ministering to the migrants and their families. Hence, the understanding of the founder's spirituality could not be separated from the very work of the Scalabrinians. The significant aspect in which missionaries in our area live Scalabrinian spirituality today and possible developments for the future. Aware of the enormous missionary efforts invested by the senior Scalabrinians in the province to develop St. Francis Cabrini province to what it is at present, the younger converts try their best to maintain and further develop what they had started, but at the same time learn from their mistakes. While individualistic attitude is difficult to overcome by some confreres, there are a lot of efforts being adopted in the province to address this unwarranted nuisance. After all, some confreres have truly done good jobs for solely doing something without the support of the confreres living with them. The visit of the Provincial Superior to the mission and the confreres is an outstanding practice in the province to check and assess the state of religious community life being lived and witnessed by all confreres. The constant evaluation of the provincial and local community missionary project is another affirmative methodology to which the spirituality of the congregation could be easily monitored and further enhanced or developed. The rectors of the seminaries in different countries are now mostly Asians, which could lead to a birth of a positive appropriation of the Scalabrinian spirituality. The mere fact that the province has the youngest average age in the congregation allows confreres to see more beautiful expressions of the spirituality of the founder if guided appropriately in the near future. This, however, requires further study and not easy to speculate for its results. Language plays an important role in shaping and sustaining any given spirituality. Already in Asian countries where the Scalabrinians are present, stampitas with the prayers to the founder had been translated into various languages like Bahasa Indonesia, Mandarin Chinese, Nihongo, Spanish, Portuguese, Tagalog, and Vietnamese. The life story of the founder was likewise translated into local language and made available in printed form in Indonesia and Vietnam for wider reach. One interesting result of the appropriation of the founder's spirituality is an Indonesian song composed by one of our Indonesian confreres. Inspired by the work and spirituality of the founder, the song is an attempt to fully embrace the spirit that is present in the congregation's charism. It is now being sung in important feasts and celebrations of the province. You heard it last Monday was it in Tuesday? Sorry, last Tuesday rather. Conclusion. With the continuous expansion of the presence of the Scalabrinians in Asia, it is expected that the founder's spirituality may take further a different form or forms. Asia is a continent with its enormous wealth in religious, cultural, linguistic backgrounds and mentalities. Definitely could pose a challenge to the congregation, particularly how the usual Western understanding of spirituality is defined or has been presented that might clash with the understanding by the new members coming from this continent. Is the congregation ready to embrace the difference? For instance, hospitality is one important character demanded in Matthew 25:35, the biblical verse that is warmly embraced by the Asian Scalabrinians who are known for its warm welcome. The spirit of welcome is real character that every Scalabrinian should possess. This is one character, unfortunately, that has incited discussions in living community life. It has always been easy to feed the hungry or thirsty or to clothe the naked if someone has the surplus, to visit the sick and the prisoner, especially when they happen to be a friend or a relative, but not to someone who is different from us. Hence, this biblical verse demanded from every Christian in the expression of charity, the highest illustration of love in Christian theology, should always be practiced starting from home, from the very religious community, which is for some, if not for many converts, could be a real cross so heavy to carry. In his message addressed to all confreres as the congregation prepared for the celebration of Scalabrinian year in 2021 to 2022, following the beatification of the founder 25 years before, the provincial superior of our province has reiterated that the closest migrant that each Scalabrinian should serve is his confrere. Seemingly, such invitation is simple yet could be the most challenging application of the spirituality that has been perceived as an incarnation of the very spirituality of the founder. Hence, the application of the gospel verse in Matthew 25:35 among converts remains a continuous challenge and still a work in progress. Thank you.